What's up, guys? Let's talk Lua. Hey, Han. All right, guys. So let's dive into Lua. So far, we've downloaded the command line. Now let's take a moment to get our minds, wrap our minds around what a programming language is. So you can kind of think of a language as a building, an industrial complex that has been designed to accomplish a certain task. Different industrial complexes do different things. You know, you can think of the Coca-Cola plant that produces Coke, the GM plant that produces cars. Pretty awesome. These computer languages are specifically designed to do different things. In our case, this building is called the Lua building. And the really, really nice thing about it is that there's actually no fee to use this industrial complex. We are free. There's an open door. You can just use the complex and at no charge. So that's one of the main reasons why we're using Lua. The other reason is that it is extremely user-friendly. Now, that may cost it some functionality, but it's a great place to start. It allows for it looks a lot more like English, and I'm not saying it does look like English, but a lot more like English than many other languages out there. So this right here is what a language is like. It's a big building with a lot of stuff inside. Let's start looking at let's now look at what is actually inside this building. So here's the general layout of this industrial complex. We've got highlighter. We've got walls. This is the language, everything that a language is, and it is contained inside the walls. We've got some. Let me start with the interpreter. It just kind of sits there at the entrance, and it takes the instructions. And then we've got some shelving. And this shelving is one of the most critical parts of the operation inside of this factory. So obviously, if we want the industrial complex to do something for us, we need to tell it what to do. So you could maybe think of this as a piece of paper, and on this piece of paper, you would draw out some instructions, and you would then take these instructions and go to the front door. You can't go to the side door. You got to go to the front door, and that's kind of where, like, maybe you could analogize this as the command console. So you go to the front door, and you hand them this piece of paper. Now, if this paper is written in Japanese, and this is, let's say, these are all Americans over here, they are not going to do what you ask them to do. And for this analogy, we want them to make a really nice car. So we have all the instructions. We say, okay, we want leather seats, we want all this stuff, but we've written it in Japanese. We hand it to the interpreter. The interpreter says, sorry, I can't do this. I don't even know what you're asking for. But we know, well, I've got this great idea. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be beautiful. But we haven't written it in the right language, then we've got to do that, right? We've got to write it in the language that the industrial plant understands. In this case, of course, that is Lua. And Lua comes with a lot of different, it comes with its own rules for the language. So, of course, in our case, we are writing the language using a lot of English. So in one exercise, we created a variable called a, and we gave it a value of 3. So these are all very American things. The important thing to note here, and is often overlooked, is this guy right here. There's a lot of different ways of making a equal to 3, and you don't have to always use an equal sign. But of course, I would say internationally. Just across the world, globally, we consider this the way to assign value. So this right here is a way. This is the way that the Lua language expects to receive information, or in this case, how to set a equal to 3. So you've got to actually use it in that sense. So we've tailored our instructions just right for the Lua language, and we send it to the interpreter hoping, oh, maybe this will work. Guess what? It's not going to work because it always has a problem. And typically it's a problem. You'll see this a lot. The interpreter will spit back out. It'll say, sorry, you've got a syntax. What? A syntax error. What in the world is syntax? Well, that, like I said, is that equal sign and a lot of other characters. And this is basically, it's saying, hey, you got to communicate in Lua, not in some other language, because we don't know what you're talking about. So we're going to be seeing this a lot. Let me give you some color there. We're going to see this a lot. Syntax errors. So you say, okay, fine. You take your piece of paper back. You say, oh, I see where I messed up. Okay. You change your little mistake and you hand it back. And this goes back and forth. This will happen. Let me do it in yellow, huh? This will happen several times where you're like, okay, fine. I'll fix that. Until finally the interpreter says, yay, you did it right. Or it just doesn't care. And it then executes the instructions, okay? Now, these instructions, a lot of them involve going to the shelf and then back. So this is like going to the shelf and getting stuff, and then, you know, let's just say there's tires on the shelf. Goes, oh yeah, so put tires on the car. Okay, and it goes over to the shelving, grabs the tires, and then brings it back, right? So you could think of there being some project going on right here, and it's slowly assembling it and building it. Of course, in the language, this happens extremely fast, but so we've got a lot of activity between the interpreter and the shelving. The interpreter is taking the code or the instructions in chunks. So it takes one chunk and it does that chunk, and it comes back and does another chunk. And this is a Lua term. And it works its way through the code until finally it ends and it's done building. And what do you know? You've got, I'll just go ahead and add a car here. You've got this beautiful, like, look at that thing. I mean, that car, isn't it beautiful? And you see this wonderful creation come out. You know what? Actually, let me explain this again. It goes back and forth, and it's like, okay, you put the wheel there, and then okay, what? And what do you know? You've got this monstrosity of a car that you have told it to build, and it just doesn't come out right. And you're like, what are you doing? What'd you do? Well, and then we look back at the instructions, and oh dear, we wrote in there that the tire was supposed to be a little bit higher than the other one, and we didn't intend to write it that way. So we've got to scratch that out, and we've got to do this again and write this new line. So it's a very, 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 you know, if you're wanting to build something quite complex, it's a lot. But eventually we do it just right, and what do you know? Look at this beautiful car. This thing comes out. I mean, it's a Rolls Royce of a car. It's just beautiful. And it comes rolling out of the factory, and we were just so happy, yay! And we've used the language and to accomplish something great. So that is my that is a language. That is a language. That is the general process of using a language, communicating with a language, and so on and so forth. In the following lessons, I'm going to hit the shelving we're going to hit the shelving hard, because we want to understand what is the shelving, how do we use it. It's a very, very critical part of the process. And next, the other thing that's very, very important is understanding syntax, because obviously, as I was describing, syntax causes a lot of the problems that we will encounter. So we're going to hit that hard and try to understand syntax. Start embracing the word, okay? Don't get all stiff arm against syntax, okay? Embrace it. It's the Lua language. We've got to learn how to speak it in order to actually make our beautiful cars. Okay, guys? So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.